Hey, Dr. Bill Dorfman here with JuVan Langford. So this is our 5th weekly mentor interview, and I can't thank you enough for being here. So let me tell everybody about you a little bit. I'm going to read this. JuVan, his personal belief is that many of the world's greatest challenges are a result of dysfunctional men. Yeah, no wonder, right? And it's his mission to cultivate growth environments for men, safe spaces where they gather to genuinely connect and are generously supported in breaking through their personal challenges and then creating a legacy. In addition, his contribution to personal development and human potential arena, JuVan Langford is the creator of the national NGO known as Mentors Making Major Moves that spearheads annual programming called the Mentor, M-E-N, Tour. I like that. Leadership and social emotional initiative built to teach that serves 500 plus middle school male teens on a monthly basis in the Los Angeles area. I asked him to tell me, like, what exactly do you do? And he said, these are the 3 bullet points, and I'll have him talk about each. He's a men's empowerment coach, a digital storyteller, and a global speaker. So welcome to our mentor workshop. So what we do at LEAP is we do a mentor workshop at the end of LEAP on Friday. LEAP, for more information about LEAP, I'll just tell them real quick, it's www.leapfoundation.com. And at the end of the week, what we do is we take mentors like you and we sit them at a table and we let the students have 30 minutes to just kind of fire away questions and ask them a lot of things I'm going to be asking you. So I know you go out and spread an awesome message to all these young men. But what I want to know really for our listeners is, if they want to start doing what you're doing, if they want to go out, if they feel like they have a message that they want to get out to an audience, where do they start? How do you learn? Let me ask you first, who inspired you? Who was your mentor where you were like a young guy one day looking up at the stage and said, I like what that guy's doing or that lady's doing, I want to do that? Who was that?
I'd say, before I answer that, I want to just really acknowledge you for the work you do with LEAP. I had an opportunity to come last year and sit behind the room. You invited me out in the back of the room, and to see the energy of the kids in the room, it's just something that will always be in my head for the rest of my life. So I really acknowledge the work that you're doing in the world. The person who inspired me, was many of them, but I say the person who stands out the most was Les Brown. Les Brown is somebody I used to watch in college and in high school, and I used to go back home after school and I'd watch all his videos on YouTube. And I loved the way that he was able to tell a story with layers, textures, and colors. It was really inspiring, and he captured you in those moments. And I think life is really about creating those moments like you do with the LEAP Foundation.
So where did you start? Like, you know, Les inspires you, then you feel like I have a message and I want to get this out to these guys. Where'd you start?
Absolutely.
How did it all start?
For anyone who has a desire to step into the personal development arena, or to be a speaker, or to be an author, or to inspire people with your story, you start exactly with that, your story. And for me, just to give you some broad strokes to the people who are watching, I grew up on the East Coast in Massachusetts, and at the age of 4, I lost my dad. He had leukemia. And my mother also struggled with drugs most of my life, drugs and alcohol. And so I was raised in foster care. And so for a long time, I thought I was a charity case. I thought that I wasn't going to be nothing. I couldn't do anything, because I grew up around a lot of examples of what not to be and what not to do. And fortunately, as we all do, we turn to something, right? When we don't know where to go, I turned to sports. I played sports most of my life. Ran track, played football, played basketball. And as a 6'6", 220-foot guy, that was really the only option, right? So I played that, and I had a real good time in it, but that's where I found my identity. I didn't have an identity, and so I got lost in that, and along that way I had a lot of coaches and teachers who really took me under their wing and would inspire me and really encourage me that I would become something more than I was. And I'd say there was one mentor in particular, I call him Pops. He's a father of a friend of mine who encouraged me, and he would take me out to eat and dinner, inspired me, and it was always there for me. Never wanted anything, but he was always showing up. And he showed up no matter what.
That's amazing.
And that's the most important thing. For me, a mentor is a no matter what. Somebody who's not concerned about your background, not concerned about what your vision is, your past or your future. They're really there with you now. And they really can show up and be a generous listener. But I feel like a lot of kids nowadays, young people, the challenges that they're dealing with in the world are a result of not being heard and seen in the household early on.
All right, so you get to the point where you're ready to now go out and spread your word.
Yeah.
how do you start that? Where do you go? You go to schools? How do you start that whole thing?
Yeah, I went to school for business in Spanish, which is not really what I'm doing now. I speak Spanish, but it's not what I'm focusing on. It's really being around the community. It's about tribe, being around the right people. And when I finished school, I went abroad, went to live in Spain and made some friends. I moved back to the US, went to school in New York, and I ended up moving to LA about 7 years ago. And when you're around certain people, they influence how you show up.
But no, I don't mean show up. I mean, like, how did you book a gig? Like,
Okay,
I want to be in front of you guys. How'd that happen?
Good question. So I just did it without the money. I went up to a couple of schools and said, hey, I'm really here. I believe I'm here to share my story. I think that my story will inspire young people. The first school I went to was back in the East Coast, middle school, and I just shared my story, and they said, oh, you did a really good job. I took photos, and I shared it on social media, and it kind of just trickled from there. And then as word spread, I got good with crafting a story and being able to tell it in a way that people can locate themselves and relate to me. And it just kind of just trickled from there, and I put myself in the arena, and I attended workshops and trainings, and I just surrounded myself with people who were doing what I desired to do.
And see, this is a great thing, because what you can do, there are so many resources today available to young students that weren't before. So you can, and I've suggested this to a lot of our LEAP students, is sit yourself in a room with a small audience of 10 or 15 people and just do it on Facebook Live.
For sure.
Because when you go to Beverly Hills High School, which is right outside this window here, and you say, hey, I'd like to speak to your students, they're like, on what?
Exactly.
You say, look, and if you can show people, and some of the best motivational speakers I know and public speakers I know start off doing it for free.
For ssure.
Just going out. James Malinchak, who's helped us for years with LEAP, he went to probably 50, 60 different colleges and never got paid a penny.
Yeah.
Just to get the experience, because what I find as a speaker too is that every time you speak, you get just a little bit better.
Course.
And when you have the opportunity to watch yourself, whether they videotape it or you're on TV, I know I'm going to be my biggest critic. Like, I will watch myself and say, oh man, I can't believe I did that. I can't, and so you learn how to be better by that,
Yeah, absolutely. Practice makes perfect. And I think the biggest misconception with people who are in school and they want to be a motivational speaker, they want to be, do workshops or trainings or inspire people with music, film, television, art, whatever it may be, is that I have to have a degree. And while I am all for education, I went to school, got a master's, had that whole experience. I do believe in education, but I also believe that we don't need a PhD to do a lot of things. And people think, let me stay in school, and they build up all these loans and have all this pressure on them, and they can't even focus and have the space to really step into what they're passionate about. And so for me, the only PhD I need is passion, heart, determination. That's what I say a lot.
Yeah, and you have to be genuine. You have to be genuine, because there is nothing, when you're on stage, you have to be so transparent and so genuine, because when you aren't, people just tune out right away.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite part of what you do today?
So many components. So I'd say a lot of what I do as far as a men's empowerment coach, I do workshops and trainings around the world. So I travel from continent to continent working with small groups of men and inspiring them to break through this story. As you shared, I believe that the greatest challenges in the world are a result of dysfunctional men. And men are dysfunctional because
I agree with that.
They're at war with themselves, and it's not a safe space for us to really connect genuinely and to be with each other, be here now. It's just not available to a lot of men. So I feel, for me personally, having that experience as a young child, not having a consistent dad in the household, or having a mentor who's there with me every day, that it gets to be creative. So I'm creating those spaces, and I'm learning that a lot of men, English men, Canadian men, American men, French men, Australian men, they're all dealing with the same thing, and it's really looking for permission to really step into.
So how do you book those? Like, do you have an agent that's doing it for you? Is this happening through social media? Are you sending out brochures? How does this happen?
Yeah. I say some people have a strong will, and most people have a strong won't. I'm just willing to do things that most people won't. So I will call local schools, I love that, by the way. That's great. You go online, I'll post it, I'll ask for feedback, for support, I'll join groups on Facebook, I do Facebook ads, I reach out for support, I ask for support, because I know that the vision that I have is bigger than all the challenges that will come as a result.
Yeah, and one of the things that we always say is that successful people are willing to do the things that unsuccessful people won't. We had a question, I just ignored it because we were talking. So what was your first big break? Like, if you said, I was, putting along, doing this, doing that, and all of a sudden, boom, this is what happened.
Yeah.
What was this that
I would say
happened?
I moved to LA, and within the first couple of years, I did Uber driving, babysitting. I worked for CAA, I worked for Tom Cruise. I climbed the whole entertainment ladder, played sports. I did all these odd jobs to figure out what my passion was. That's another thing. I was willing to do whatever it took to make it happen. And I ended up landing a job for this startup company that was going to be this big digital media thing. They said, right? It ended up being a big digital media company called Maker Studios. I was one of the first 20 employees of the company. And as it grew, it ended up getting sold for $1 billion. And so when I left there, they cut everyone loose, and you leave there. And I remember sitting
And they
in my
gave
car,
you a big check, right?
I got a big check. They took care of me. And I remember being asked to get up from my seat, and they walked me over to the HR department, and they release you, give you your papers, and you walk. And I sat in the car, and I was looking in the rearview mirror, and I was saying, you know what? I will never work for anybody another day in my life. I will only work with people from this moment on, and I haven't. That was 4.5 years ago. I've been an entrepreneur. And I would say that when I left there, I said, okay, I want to step into something new, do my own thing. I started my own agency, Dot Life Media. And as I was doing the company, I had to get my first client. I was like, okay, now how do I get my first client for my company? And so a friend of mine needed some support with some digital media. And I remember creating a big old PowerPoint for him. It had 7 slides. And on the 6th slide, I put it's X amount of dollars. On the 7th slide, I was going to give him a deal in case his face was too much. So I put like maybe $5,000 for the package. And then, but for you, $3,500 on the 7th. And I got to the 6th slide. And he said, do I give you the check now or later? And it was in that moment that I realized that I had a lot of value to give, but it was my belief in myself that needed to kick in first. And I think a lot of people who start their own businesses or have a vision, you've got to believe in yourself. And I'm sure you can attest to that, starting your own business and knowing that it takes a lot of oomph. It takes a lot of energy to really believe in yourself. And sometimes we don't have that. That's why mentorship is so key, because we need people in our lives who believe in us until our belief in ourselves kick in.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to a dentist this morning who has a new associate in his practice, and the biggest problem he has is that this dentist is afraid to tell people there's things wrong with them because how much it's going to cost, and it's crazy. So, advice for kids. When I don't get the question. Advice for kids to follow the passion. When parents want you to...
Also, getting a good job versus the grades. I say you got to find a rhythm. There's no balance. You see balance in the hospital, you see a flat line, this is balance. No good. We don't want that in the hospital. So you got to find a rhythm. And I think for me, moving to California specifically, I moved here, grew up in foster care, and between high school and college, I was recruited to model. So I was in entertainment for about 7 years, modeling, doing print work and runway shows and all that stuff. And I learned a lot. But I loved working with vulnerable youth, and also loved entertainment. But there was nothing here specifically, so I created it. I created my organization, Mentors Making Major Moves, where we expose inner city kids to the world. So if it's not here, you got to create it. You got to figure it out. And that's why mentorship is another big component too, because you got to find people who are doing what you desire to do, and at a high level.
Totally.
With the big boys.
Totally. I mean, when I came to Los Angeles, the last thing they needed was another cosmetic dentist, But what I did was I sat down with 5 of the most successful dental practices in the Beverly Hills area like a sponge. And I just shadowed these guys, and I watched them, and I wrote down everything that they were doing. And then I went back to my office and tried to do it even better.
Yeah. What I will say that I do want to speak into this, because this is it's a question that comes up quite
often. Read
often.
the question though, because I don't know if they know what we're talking
advice
about.
for kids to follow their passion. When parents want you to get a good job and get good grades, or following your passion. First of all, you can have both. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Totally agree.
Right? 100% is possible 100% of the time. The second thing I would say is that if you choose not to follow your passion, it will be a much more challenging road. Period. You've got to do what lights you up. You got to do what lights you up, because if you don't, you won't live amongst the willing. You won't get up early. You won't stay up late.
Right.
You won't go the extra mile. You won't do the work. You won't put the money in when it's your last dollar. You just won't do it. And so you gotta find the thing that lights you up. If it's music, if it's fashion, if it's film, if it's gaming, find a way.
But I also think you have to have a realistic game plan.
Sure.
And because especially in the Los Angeles area where I live, I see a lot of young people that want to be models and actors and all those things are great, and that may be your passion, but there's one really big component of that they don't think about, and it's this. You can be the greatest actor in the world. You don't control your career.
Absolutely.
There's a whole room of people that sit there and say, and it just may be your look, like he's too tall or he's too short. So, yeah, if that's your passion, I say, be the best you can be. Take classes, take acting class, take all these classes and be as good as you can be. But you also have to be realistic. This may not happen.
Yeah.
This is one of the most competitive industries in the world, and you have to create something that's going to sustain you in life.
I say maybe the same thing, maybe it's semantics, but I say you got to be delusional. I say a lot of people, you got to work that job for a little while, right? But the job's 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. You have 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. to focus on your dreams and passion. If you do that long enough, you do the things that produce results daily, you can step into that. And I think that a lot of people, they don't know where they're different, so nobody pursues them for that difference. You stepped into an arena that was saturated.
Right.
Completely saturated.
Right.
But you found your difference, which is why people, celebrities, athletes have pursued you for that difference. And so if you want to be in music, how can you approach this industry with a different voice, the different story, with the different,
Right.
Are you with me?
Yeah, no,
that's the big
I mean,
thing.
that's the same thing that we were just looking at with, Billie Jean, and this is a guy who's in your space, and, he's out there trying to get followers, and his whole mission is, let me be as different as I can be. So they call it, talking at the water cooler.
Sure.
Give me a reason to sit at the water cooler and talk about you, and that's why reality TV, has exploded, because people like to see different stuff, unusual things that they're going to sit and talk about.
Yeah. One thing I talk a lot about too, and I want to ask you a question now, is a lot of people focus on the job and the passion to make money. They want to make the $1 billion. They want to make the $100 million, right? What has money taught you about yourself and the world?
It's really funny because, I knew I would be comfortable as a dentist. I never expected to be super wealthy from it, but I knew I'd have a comfortable living and all that. And I know a lot of people say, oh, money doesn't buy you happiness, and I agree, it doesn't buy you happiness, but I'll tell you this, it's very hard to be happy when you have no money, when you can't eat, when you can't support your family. So, there's a little bit of a mixed message in there. I don't necessarily focus on, the money. What I focus on really for me is the passion of my work. And what I've realized is that the more passionate I am and the better I get at it, that tended to translate into a better income. And the craziest thing, JuVan, in my career is I found that the times when I gave back is when I made the most money.
I'm so happy you said that. I'm so happy you said
It's
that.
crazy because it's like,
Service.
I'm gonna talk, the Crown Council is a group of dentists, and this is a story that happened where, they came to our company. We had the largest whitening company in the world, Discus Dental. We make Night White and Day White and Zoom and Bright Smile. And they came to our company and they said, hey, can you sell us your whitening products at cost so that we could do a campaign and get people to go whiten their teeth?
Right.
And when we heard about it, we said, we're not gonna sell it to you, we're gonna give it to you. So we gave it to them. Right? We gave it to the Crown Council, and then Garth Brooks and a bunch of celebrities went out and did public service announcements, and we had people call dental offices. Instead of writing a check to the dental office, they wrote it to Smiles for Life. Since we donated the product and Garth paid all the operational expenses, 100% of that money went to kids.
Wow.
We raised over $35 million for children's hospitals.
Amazing.
But from
That's awesome.
a business perspective, we got a group of a few thousand really loyal dentists who only bought our products.
Wow.
So here was something we did purely from a philanthropic
It
standpoint,
always comes back tenfold.
and we got customers for life.
Yeah.
So I always feel the more you give back, the more you're gonna get.
Absolutely. Service is everything. And I feel like for me personally, this year has been one of the most phenomenal years of my life, business-wise, learning as a I'd say a budding entrepreneur, just especially in the men's arena, working with men. It's been about a year, but I've traveled 5 continents, worked with over hundreds of men from different backgrounds, and I know that it's happening this way with this momentum because I'm in service. And I know that when you focus out on others, the universe conspires, people conspire, energy, money, everything just tends to work out because of the focus is on people. And I think my message, my bigger message, Bill, is that it's not about financial wealth, it's about relational wealth. It's about the people. It's about focusing on the people, focusing on the movement. And if you're not a part of a movement or leading one yourself, I think you're doing everything wrong. And I think the LEAP is very clearly a movement. Mentors Making Major Moves is a movement, and it's
Right.
inspiring, touching and moving people to take action and knowing that there's something more available to them in this world.
Well, you know that feeling you got when you walked into LEAP?
Yeah.
I got that same feeling 20 years ago. There was a program prior to this. It was founded by two men who are very good friends of mine. Well, one of them passed away,
Okay.
and that program left. And you know, of all the philanthropic things I do, that was the one thing that really hit me in the heart, you know, because it's one thing to raise $35 million for children's hospitals through Smiles for Life. It's another thing when you actually sit and work with these young men and women. And to see them grow and live and marry and have kids and all that was just an amazing thing. And that's why we brought LEAP back. And this will be our 10-year anniversary this year. And you need to come.
Amazing. Yeah,
you
I'll
need
be
to come
there.
again.
Hopefully on the stage. Hopefully on the stage.
You will be. So here's another question from one of the listeners. How do you market your business and your brand?
Yeah, really people. I know a lot of people, traditionally it's the Facebook ads and it's the, running marketing and paying for ad spend, a lot of ad spend. But a lot of what I do is very intimate. A lot of the gatherings I do as far as workshops, anywhere from 15 to 30 guys. So it's really word of mouth. Word of mouth is the most powerful business tool to man. It's antiquated in many senses, but it works and people are moved by your story. And so I do a lot of original content on YouTube, and that usually gets a lot of traction. A lot of men reach out to me through that. And just previous clients. And how I started was running the ads and doing all this stuff, but as momentum has built, it's been about connecting with people. And I think when you create impact, when you impact someone's life, their lives transform through a workshop, through a training, through 6 months of coaching, then they send people to you. It's cyclical.
No, that's awesome.
And
next
clients
time,
referrals,
next time you do one in LA area, would you invite me? You've got my number.
I would love
now.
to have you.
Yeah,
come.
call me. I'd love to
I'd love
come.
to have you.
So we have to wrap it up.
You guys heard that, right? It's going to be
no,
an elevation
gonna
effect, Mr. Phil.
I'm coming. Well, okay, last question. What's the future?
The future is, my vision for the future is to continue to build out a global digital brotherhood, a safe haven. So I'm launching an academy, Elevated Men Academy for men, do workshops in the future. My organization serves over 500 inner city boys in the inner city schools, so we'll be spreading the programming through the district and doing collaborative efforts with other organizations like LEAP, and just really creating the safe spaces for people, because the world is hurt by dysfunctional men. When they step into being dysfunctional and into being empowered, then our women are empowered as well, right? I think a lot of our women are not only raising children, but raising themselves, because the men are not showing up. And so my vision is to really redefine what it means to be a man in the world.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
That's
having me.
amazing.
Appreciate you.
You're definitely going to be on stage at LEAP.
Awesome.
And I'm definitely going to go to one of your programs. So let me know when the next one is
Absolutely.
in LA. So just for this week only, any of your followers who call up will get a $500 discount. You can go to the LEAP website, www.leapfoundation.com, or you can call our office at 877-855-5327.
Awesome.
And we have somebody answering the phones. Next week, our speaker is going to be who, Mark?
Justin Lefkovich.
Justin Lefkovich. And Justin does what?
He's a guy who has a business that connects celebrities and influencers with very successful Fortune 100 companies.
All right. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great holiday season starting up. And Dr. Bill, over and out.
Signing off.
That was awesome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right.